It's back in the summer of 2022 when I was sitting in the living room with my brother, my father, and my mother, and they dropped the news that they were going to have a divorce. It was the first day of summer break, and my entire summer was literally ruined because of that, or at least I thought so. But I remember that I went on TikTok and I continued to scroll for a couple of hours after the divorce because I wanted to numb myself with some content consumption. And so I was scrolling through and I see a video, kind of like a slideshow video where you can scroll through photos. And I remember that I saw a post about personal development and that there was an ability to improve yourself. It was kind of like a post where they said these influencers you should follow for mindset. It was kind of like David Goggins, and then for money it was like Iman Gadzhi and people like that. And I was watching these people's YouTube videos because I thought this is pretty interesting. And I discovered monk mode. I discovered all of these things that you're able to actually improve yourself in various ways. And I was a bit lost because I had no idea where to start because everybody was contradicting each other. Some people said monk mode is the only way. Some people said the only way is to reduce it gradually, to do a dopamine detox, to be staring at your wall, whatever. And today I want to boil it down into just 4 essential life rules that I think everybody should follow if they want to live a prosperous life of growth and of persistence. Especially in hardship, these rules help you since you're able to kind of like take a step back and allow yourself to feel these things and be able to cope with things better. So rule number 1, it's all about contrast. So what do I mean by it's all about contrast? Contrast simply means that our brain, first of all, wants to choose the path of the least amount of pain and suffering. And when we have a contrast in options, for example, if you were about to change your life and you could watch, number 1, a movie about how to do it, was highly engaging with many dopamine hit markers and all of that. Or you could choose to read a book about it that was very intellectual and you had to kind of like process the information that you were reading, almost every single sentence, to sit down and interpret the information. What would you have chosen? And in this particular instance, like 95% of people would probably have chosen the movie because it's more stimulating, because it requires less suffering to just go through an actionable movie that is very stimulating. And so therefore, reading a book in this instance would probably be somewhat around 5%, and somewhere around 95% would choose the more stimulating alternative, because some people would still have better attention spans and more drawn out ones because they wouldn't be able to even follow through with a movie because it's so engaging. And this is just the law of contrast. But if we remove the movie alternative right here, and we remove the percentiles as well, and we had another option, it was to either read a book on how to change your life, or it was to sit and stare at a wall and somebody was speaking to you very quietly, slowly, in a very like wishy-washy way which you couldn't understand. So we will just write S for speech, for example. And most people would now choose the book, probably 90%, because this is so much more straightforward and now you could read a book. What I'm getting at here is that it's all about contrast. When we have the alternative to do something that is very stimulating, that shoots up our baseline of dopamine and our baseline of pleasure, what will happen is that our brain will want more of that. And so if we just remove this kind of thing and we introduce something new instead, we will be able to take a step back and read that book and go and study on time, whatever it is that you feel like you're struggling with. You will be able to do it. And this is really how we escape like ruts and things that are holding us back. We have to understand that it's all about contrast. It's not the exact problem that you're facing, it's rather how you're interpreting it. So the more you try to shift your perspective of things, that's how we allow ourselves to improve gradually, because we have understood that everything is just a matter of contrast. Because if we took somebody from the medieval age, for example, and we gave them a phone and TikTok and they were able to scroll for like 4 hours a day, they wouldn't be able to read a book. But if we took somebody from the medieval age and learned and taught them how to read, for example, and we gave them a pretty well written book from this day and age, they would appreciate it so much, just because of contrast. contrast is the most important thing in our life. It's even so important when it comes to all decision making, because if you can just look at your life and be grateful for the things that you have, you will be able to feel that light, just because you've understood the importance of just stepping out of your own perspective and look at your life from a different angle. For example, if you feel like there's nothing to be grateful for in my life, if you're not in a war-torn country, and you can step into yourself and look at your life and see like, oh, I could be in a country which is in a war right now. That's something to be grateful for. I had food on my plate, I have a computer, I have an internet connection, and I can do literally anything just because I know that I've got access to all of the information available. It's just a matter of contrast and a matter of belief. So this is rule number 1, and if you introduce this to your life, I promise you it will never ever be the same. Rule number 2, self-hate does not equal progress. So, what do I mean by this? In this year, in like April or March, I was having a discussion with my father, and I said, and came to a pretty great realization, and that was that self-hate does not equal progress. If you love yourself, you will be able to make more progress than if you hated yourself, because when you're on the path to improving yourself and you are kind of like, you're doing all of the positive habits and you're checking off and you're moving the needle and you're moving towards your goals, what will happen is that eventually you will start to decline in progress, or you will experience somewhat of a fall off because you lack motivation, you feel a sense of purposelessness. And when you do that, and when you go back to your old self and you start with the habits that you thought you'd overcome and then that you were better than, you will start to introduce some self-hate and self-harm, because you know that these things are not good for you, so you try to make progress through hating yourself and through negative affirmations. And every single time that we're introducing a negative affirmation to ourselves, we are just making this problem even worse. Because if you have a belief and that belief is confirmed through action, so for example, if you believe something negative about yourself, I hate myself, if that's a statement that you undeniably believe is true, and then you go out and you try a new sport, for example, and you thought you would going to be really good at this sport, and you're terrible, and somebody tells you that, this will continue to manifest itself because you've already planted the seed of self-hatred, and you thought that now I'm going to make more progress because I'm hating myself and I've acknowledged the fact that I'm not satisfied with the progress that I'm making. And what I'm aiming at here is that instead of looking at yourself with self-hatred, you have to position yourself in a state of love and in a state of positivity. And how do we do that practically? Start to detach yourself from the external results of the world. What do I mean? If you have an exam, for example, and your goal was to get B, for example, and you fail and you get, let's say, a D, and you think to yourself, I was supposed to get a B, I studied like for 5 hours yesterday to get this goal, and then you only get a D, what will happen is that you might experience some self-hatred. But if you just take a step back and say to yourself, does this really matter in a year from now? Then you can turn this self-hatred into a sense of progress, and you can instead ask yourself, how can I turn this around the next time? The reason this is so important is because if we start to hate ourselves, we shift our perspective from the progress to the hating oneself part. And the reason that this happens is because we think we're being productive when we're having these types of thoughts, because we're thinking that this is somewhat of a solution, because all humans have a negativity bias, which just means that we tend to look at things from a more negative standpoint, because when we were like cavemen and cavewomen, we all had to look out for predators and hunters. And just repeat one sentence, I'm not going to die from this. I know it seems silly, but once you do this and you start to manually implement thoughts of that you are great, and try to really get to the bottom of the things of why you might hate yourself, or why you might be talking negatively about yourself, because every single time you're doing that, that's a statement which your brain thinks is true. Your brain doesn't know if if when you're joking, it can't understand that context. It's just black and white. If you tell yourself that I hate myself, that's a statement that undeniably becomes true and programs our subconscious mind. And so the more we can implement manual thoughts of love and positivity, that's how we start to make progress. And how do we do that? Well, put emotion to it. Everything is just emotion, because once we put an emotion to something, that's when our lives change, because emotions dictate our actions, and emotion is just an embodiment of what our body wants us to do. And that's really how this works. So please do not conflict self-hate with progress. That's so important, and I've suffered from this so much in my own journey. It's only lately I've actually realized that how detrimental this is for your own growth. Rule number 3, keep your goals private. The reason this is so important is for a bunch of reasons, but I want to discuss something that is very interesting about this concept. Number 1 is that when we tell our goals, it releases a hormone called dopamine, and you've probably heard about dopamine. Everybody's talking about it nowadays, but the reason that it releases dopamine is that your brain thinks you've already accomplished the goals, and so your brain starts to reward yourself for talking about your goals instead of acting upon them. So if you keep your goals private and you visualize yourself vividly already accomplishing them, your brain won't release the amount of dopamine from that just because you're not telling anybody about it. Why shouldn't we tell our goals to other people? It's because it releases so much stimuli. If you've ever spoke to anybody about you're gonna make this plan on how to get rich this summer, or you're gonna build this body, or you're gonna make the crazy comeback to the sport, or to the gym, whatever it is, it releases so much dopamine and stimuli that it just freezes us, and we're not able to take any action at all, and we just grow stagnant because we think that we've already accomplished the goal. We feel happy in the moment because we think that we've already accomplished the goal because we're speaking about it. So what I like to do when it comes to my own goals, I tape them up on my wall. This might even sound silly, but if I would just move my camera, I can record this afterwards. But onto my wall, there's papers all over my wall. That is saying to me my own goals and my own affirmations. And when we explain our goals and say in depth of I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, it might give us some sense of accountability, but most of the time people just forget about it and you just procrastinate and there's not really anything. Because in 2023, I think it was, in like October, the school year had started like 1 or 2 months ago, when I had a friend and a classmate of mine that we were going to start to do reselling. We were going to resell clothes because we'd found a way to make money. And what happened was that we didn't do any of it. We just talked about it. We made a logo. We made all of these things. So instead of yapping about your goals, take action. It's so simple. But when it comes to this YouTube channel, I almost didn't tell anyone besides like my family for, I don't even know, it was like a month or something like that. Just because I knew that if I would start to talk about my YouTube channel to other people and my goals, I'm gonna get to this amount of followers or this amount of views. People, number 1, they don't care that much. Number 2, that's none of their business. It's up to you if you want to share your goals with the people around you, but don't share the exact number or the exact thing or the romanticized version of the goal that you think that you're going to accomplish. Just share the pursuit of what you're doing. And what I mean by that is, if you want to make $10,000 a month, for example, with sneaker reselling, tell people, I'm gonna get into sneaker reselling, instead of telling them about your goal. It's okay to tell people about the pursuit, because that doesn't release as much dopamine, because it's not really tied to a goal. It's more tied to an action, which our brain hates. It hates taking action and the action of doing something that is very hard, for example, recording a video. So if I would tell people I'm gonna record videos, it's not that fancy, and our brain won't release as much dopamine because it's tied to something that is hard. And one thing I just want you to remember is that hard things are hard, that's why they're hard. That's a quote by Alex Ramosi, I'm pretty sure, but I really appreciate that quote. But that's rule number 3. Let's get on to the last rule of the video. Rule number 4, you cannot change anyone. The reason that I'm telling you this is because in like 2023, 2022 and all this, I tried to change so many people. I tried to get people onto personal development. Why, you might ask? Because it was such an eye-opening thing for me, where I thought, that was a pretty bad eye, but it was such an I have no idea how to draw eyes, but it was such an eye-opening experience for me, and I thought, this is really cool. I'm gonna get to this point and I'm going to be so happy and fulfilled and all that. But I realized that in order for me to make progress onto my goals, I need to focus on myself internally, because I'm not doing that when I'm actually just talking about my goals and I'm trying to change everybody else. Because people don't care. If you are on the pursuit to try to improve yourself in some way, just imagine the hardships and the times where you feel like it's going up and down and up and down and up and down. Your journey somewhat looks like this on a day-to-day basis. Imagine how hard it would be for somebody else who doesn't even have the motivation and drive to do this in the first place. This is why you cannot change anyone. So focus on yourself and lead by example. That is the best path ahead of you. Because in a few years from now or in a few months from now, you will have the credibility so that people will start to ask you, how did you do that? How did you do that? Then you can explain, because people have to come to you, because you can't change anyone, you can't influence anybody who doesn't want to be influenced. The reason that I'm telling you all this is because I spent so much energy and time trying to change everybody else and trying to introduce this magic pill of personal development to other people, because I thought it was the right thing to do. But what I realized was that if people haven't discovered this yet, it is for one of two reasons, and 99% is the first reason, which is they don't want it. They don't want it. That's the cold, harsh truth, and the 1% is just they haven't discovered that. The reason that this is so important is because some people might judge you for trying to get them onto a different trajectory, and they might gaslight you into going back. And focus on yourself, focus on your own pursuit, and try to introduce the concept gradually to other people, but don't tell it as a guru or somebody who's gonna influence them, because if people want to be saved, they will be saved, if we wanna call it saved through personal development. But if people want it, they will find it some way. And this is just the cold, harsh truth, and this is why some people might end up a bit lonely, feel like they don't really have many friends. It's because this pursuit is very, very hard, because you can't change anyone else. And for you who want it, who are motivated and who feel purposeful about it, it's still a very, very hard and painful pursuit. So that's why you can't change anybody else. Try to focus on the things that you can do in order for you to improve yourself. And lastly, I just want to tell you, if you implement all of this with persistence, your life will never ever be the same, because these rules are so basic, but once you master the fundamentals, that's how your life ends up compounding over time. With this, I feel so purposeful and so fulfilled just because I mastered the fundamentals. It's really that simple. If your room is clean, if you go out and get sun into your eyes, and if you go to bed on time, and if you try to be polite to people, and if you try to get out of your comfort zone, that's really what you have to do if you want to progress. It's just that simple. It's all about mastering the fundamentals, and that's what I've come to realize, is that there is no magic trick or magic formula. Of course, there are steps that you can take in order for you to change your life, but still, it's just about doing stuff that sucks every single day, and over time everything compounds. In the beginning you won't see any results at all, but after a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's when your life will never ever be the same. But now I want to wrap this up, because I've been speaking for like 23 minutes now, but just obsess over this and your life will never ever be the same. I hope that you got some value out of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.